I'm Jeff Baumgartner with Light Reading. I'm pleased to be joined by James Feger with F5 Networks. So James, you haven't been with F5 that long yet, so just give us a little bit of a snapshot of your role there and kind of your initial priorities.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so I joined F5 about 2.5 months ago as the general manager of the service provider business. Really focused on helping service providers transition to an application-centric infrastructure and enabling them to serve their enterprise customers better.
Your keynote here, you're going to focus on virtualization, but also talk about the business opportunities, the other types of opportunities that it opens up. So can you give us some examples?
Yeah, it's really around simplification and helping the service providers move into a managed services world and grow their managed services business. Many of them have managed services today, but as they're looking for ways to help their customers transition to a cloud-centric or network-centric infrastructure, it's enabling them to do that through automation, through lightweight software virtualization, and through process enhancements.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the kind of the people component too of virtualization. I think you've talked about it before. As you kind of move into an agile and DevOps environment, you've talked about it requiring kind of a cultural shift. So in order to do that, though, what do you have to do? Do you have to have somebody kind of champion this idea in the company, or do you need to kind of get company-wide buy-in as soon as possible? What's the way to kind of get the ball going?
I think it's all of the above, actually. As you move from what people are comfortable with in their day life and their day jobs, and moving them into something that's slightly new, you pivot them off of their comfort zone. You're off center a little bit. And so one of the things that we need to do is help with the simplification and packaging of how you move to that world. A few years back when SDN and NFE really took off, we were talking about best of breed and stitching services together and taking different components and linking them together to create some sort of service for your customer. And what we've discovered is that the adoption rates are much lower than we had expected as an industry. So virtualization's out there. We have a lot of shows like this talking about it, but it's much more difficult than I think people anticipated in terms of integrating something seamlessly. And so the idea here is to focus on automation, but focus on automation through packages. Create packages that your customer can then consume. It doesn't all have to be from the same vendor. That's absolutely not the case. But create packages that are easy to deploy, easy to scale, easy to operate, and then easy to change out as your customer needs change.
Now, is that a way to kind of take smaller bites, without swallowing the whole thing at once?
Exactly. Well, it's smaller bites, but it's also helping the people that have to run this stuff be more comfortable with what they're doing. So you're taking a network operator or a network engineer that has grown used to knowing how things work, and then you're adding a lot of complexity in with all of these different services and different software layers and different hardware acceleration challenges. And if you take those and say, okay, well now you're an actual service integrator. Imagine if I said to you, hey, now you're a service integrator, you have to take all these components and build a nice pretty picture.
Right.
That's a little bit, that can be overwhelming for some. And so the idea here is create smaller chunks, make them packages. Say maybe I need a web application firewall, or maybe I need a load balancer, or maybe I need a policy enforcement engine. Well, what if you're able to actually deploy those and turn those on as needed through packages and flexible licensing?
And what is then kind of the biggest selling point then, for virtualization in general? Because you have to have some sort of bottom line reason to do this. So if you had to boil it down, what's the top level?
Think of an outcome. So if I'm trying to enable you to do something, what do you want that outcome to be? I equate everything back to either Lego blocks. I've talked about Lego blocks a lot in building your picture, or buying a car. You have something in your head of what you want that outcome to look like. And so you start enabling outcomes instead of, I can give you a routed function, or I can give you a firewall function. What do you actually need it to do? What do you want your traffic to look like when it arrives? And so focus on outcomes.
All right, last thing. Now that we're at the phase we are with virtualization in general, what is kind of, if you had to say one thing, what's the biggest challenge right now?
I still think it's automation.
Automation.
It's automation and helping the cultural shift to accept the automation. If you automate 70%, that's great, but you don't really see that up-step function and efficiencies until you automate the whole thing.
All right.
So,
well, James, thanks a lot for your time and your insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.